But how fared it with little Gerda when Kay never returned? She wept much and long, for the boys said he must be dead. He must have been drowned in the river that flowed not far from the town. Oh, how long and dismal the winter days were now. At last came the spring with its warm sunshine. One morning she thought to herself,
I will put on my new red shoes, those which Kay has never seen, and then I will go down to the river and ask after him.
And she went alone through the gates of the town and on to the river, and she asked,
Is it true that thou hast taken my little playfellow away? I will give thee my red shoes if thou wilt restore him to me.
And the wavelets of the river flowed towards her in a manner which she fancied was unusual. She fancied that they intended to accept the offer. So she took off her red shoes, though she prized them more than anything else she possessed, and threw them into the stream. But they fell near the shore, and the little waves bore them back to her, as though they would not take from her what she most prized, as they had not got little Kay. However, she thought she had not thrown the shoes far enough, so she stepped into a little boat which lay among the reeds by the shore, and standing at the farthest end of it, threw them from thence into the water. The boat was not fastened, and her movements in it caused it to glide away from the shore. She saw this, and hastened to get out, but by the time she reached the other end of the boat, it was more than a yard distant from the land. She couldn't escape, and the boat... Little Gerda was much frightened and began to cry. But no one besides the sparrows heard her, and they could not carry her back to the land.
Perhaps the river may bear me to my dear Kay.
At last she glided past a large cherry garden, wherein stood a little cottage with thatched roof and curious red and blue windows.
An old lady came out, supporting herself on a big hoop stick. She wore a large hat with most beautiful flowers painted on it, and she said,
Thou poor little child, the mighty flowing river has indeed borne thee a long, long way.
Seized the boat with her stick and drew it to land and took out the little girl.
Come and tell me who thou art and how thou camest hither.
And Gerda told her all. They went together into the cottage, and the old lady shut the door.
I have long wished for such a dear little girl. We shall see if we cannot live very happily together.
And as she combed little Gerda's hair, the child thought less and less of her foster brother Kay, for the old lady was an enchantress. She did not, however, practice magic for the sake of mischief, but merely for her own amusement. And now she wished very much to keep little Gerda to live with her. So, fearing that if Gerda saw her roses, she would be reminded of her own roses and of little Kay, and that then she might run away, the old lady went out into the garden and waved her hooked stick over all her rose bushes, upon which, although they were full of leaves and blossoms, they immediately sank into the black earth, and no one would have guessed that such plants had ever grown there. Then she led Gerda into this flower garden. Oh, how beautiful and how fragrant it was! Gerda bounded with delight and played among the flowers in the warm sunshine, and many more days were spent in the same manner.
Gerda knew every flower in the garden, but numerous as they were, it seemed to her that one was wanting. She could not tell which. She was sitting one day looking at her hostess's hat, which had flowers painted on it, and behold, the loveliest among them was a rose. The old lady had entirely forgotten the painted rose on her hat when she made the real roses disappear from her garden and sink into the ground. This is often the case when things are done hastily.
What? Are there no roses in the garden?
And Gerda ran from one bed to another, sought and sought again, but no rose was to be found. She sat down and wept, and it so chanced that her tears fell on a spot where a rose tree had formerly stood, and as soon as her warm tears had moistened the earth, the bush shot up anew, as fresh and as blooming as it was before it had sunk into the ground. And Gerda threw her arms around it, kissed the blossoms, and immediately recalled to memory the beautiful roses at home and her little playfellow Kay.
Oh, how could I stay here so long? I left my home to seek for Kay. Do you not know where he is, oh darling roses? Do you think that he is dead?
Dead he is not. We have been down in the earth. The dead are there, but not Kay.
Thank you.
And she went to the other flowers, bent low over their cups, and asked.
Know you not where little Kay is?
But every flower stood in the sunshine, dreaming its own little tale. Ding-dong rang the hyacinth bells.
We told not for little Kay. We know him not. We do but sing our own song, the only one we know.
And Gerda went to the buttercup, which shone so brightly from among her smooth green leaves, and said to it,
Thou art like a little bright sun. Tell me if thou canst where to find my playfellow.
And the buttercup glittered so brightly and looked at Gerda. What song could the buttercup sing? Nothing about little Kay.
And what said the narcissus?
I can look at myself. I can see myself. Oh, how sweet is my fragrance. I can look at myself. I see myself.
I don't care if you can.
And little Gerda, with bare feet, ran out into the wide world.
How long I must have stayed there. So it is now autumn. Well, then, there is no time to lose.
And she rose to pursue her way. Oh, how sore and weary were her little feet, and all around looked so cold and barren.
Gerda was again obliged to stop and take rest. Suddenly, a large raven hopped upon the snow in front of her, saying, She told the raven the history of her life and fortunes, and asked if he had seen Kay. And the raven nodded his head half doubtfully and said,
I think I know. I think it may be little Kay, but he has certainly forsaken thee for a princess.
Dwells he with a princess?
In the kingdom wherein we are now sitting, there dwells a princess, a most uncommonly clever princess. And a while ago she determined she would marry, but declared that the man whom she would choose must be able to answer sensibly whenever people spoke to him, and must be good for something else besides merely looking grand and stately. Believe me, every word I say is true, for I have a tame beloved who hops at pleasure about the palace, and she has told me all this. The people all crowded to the palace, but it was all of no use. The young men could speak well enough while they were outside the palace gates, but when they entered and saw the royal guard in silver uniform, and the lackeys on the staircase in gold, and the spacious ballroom all lighted up, they were quite confounded. They stood before the throne where the princess sat, and it was just as though they had been struck dumb the moment they entered the palace.
But Kay, little Kay, when did he come? Was he among the crowd?
Presently. On the third day arrived a youth with neither horse nor carriage. Gaily he marched up to the palace. His eyes sparkled like yours, but he was very meanly clad.
That was Kay. Oh, then I have found him.
He merrily went up to the princess, who was sitting upon a pearl as large as a spinning wheel. He did not come to woo her, he said. He had only come to hear the wisdom of the princess, and he liked her much, and she liked him in return.
Yes, to be sure, that was Kay. Oh, will you not take me into the palace?
That is easily said, but how is it to be done? I will talk it over with my tame beloved. Wait for me at the trellis yonder.
And away he flew. He did not return till late in the evening.
My tame beloved greets you kindly and sends you a piece of bread which she took from the kitchen. She knows a little back staircase leading to the sleeping apartments.
And they went into the garden, down the grand avenue where the leaves dropped upon them as they passed along. Oh, how Gerda's heart beat with fear and expectation. They went up the back staircase. A small lamp placed on a cabinet gave a glimmering light. On the floor stood a tame raven.
My betrothed has told me much about you. If you will take the lamp, I will show you the way.
It seems to me as if someone were behind us.
And in fact there was a rushing sound as of something passing. Strange-looking shadows flitted rapidly along the wall. Horses with long, slender legs and fluttering manes. Huntsmen, knights and ladies.
The tame raven explained.
These are only dreams.
The apartments through which they passed vied with each other in splendor, and at last they reached the bedchamber. In the center of this room stood a pillar of gold resembling the stem of a large palm tree whose leaves of glass formed the ceiling. And hanging from the tree near the floor on thick golden stalks were two beds in the form of lilies. The one was white, wherein reposed the princess. The other was red, and here must surely be Kay. She called him by his name aloud, held the lamp close to him. The dreams again rushed by. He woke, turned his head, and behold, it was not Kay. And the princess looked out from the white lily petals and asked what was the matter. Then little Gerda wept and told her whole story and what the ravens had done for her.
And the prince and princess pitied her, and the prince got up out of his bed and let Gerda sleep in it. And she folded her little hands, thinking,
How kind both men and animals are to me.
She closed her eyes and slept soundly and sweetly, and all the dreams flitted about her.
The next day she was dressed from head to foot in silk and velvet, and they gave her boots and a muff besides. She was dressed so prettily, and as soon as she was ready, there drove up to the door a new carriage of pure gold, with the arms of the prince and princess glittering upon it like a star, the coachman, footmen, and outriders all wearing gold crowns. The carriage was well provided with sugar plums, fruit, and gingerbread nuts. The prince and princess cried,
Farewell.
Farewell.
Little Gerda wept, and the raven wept and said goodbye. This was the saddest parting of all, and he flew up to the branch of a tree and flapped his black wings as long as he could see the carriage, that shone like the brightest sunshine.